Hello, hello, hello.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Real Estate After Dark. We are back where the market never sleeps and neither do we. Sorry, we had a very short show last weekend. My daughter.
Tell us about that.
My daughter had the cutest baby ever. Cutest baby ever. So, yeah, so I was helping her in the delivery room that day. Well, not delivery room. In the ER, or not ER, operating room. Yeah.
Delivery.
Yeah.
It's the operating delivery room.
Yeah. So it was hated to miss the show, but love the reason that I missed it. So anyway, we are your late night source for information and insight on real estate. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about divorce and real estate.
Hey, Mila.
Hi, Mila. Mwah, mwah. So lots of things, go into property, owning property, buying property, how you take property or title whenever you buy. But, marriage, you think, is 50-50. So tonight we're going to touch base a little bit about that. Divorce is always a touchy subject anyway.
It is.
And
not everybody wants to talk about it. Not everybody wants to have to go through it.
Yeah, well, no. I don't think anybody wants to.
Things do happen.
Things do happen. So, you've got to be educated on the fact that it happens and what to do when it does happen.
Yeah.
Because divorce is a pretty common thing these days. I don't know what the stats are on it, but
I don't know.
But it's very common. So I guess we'll just dive in. There's a whole lot.
Yeah, Crystal found a book of information, which is scary.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and that kind of tells you, how often, because it's a lot of.
We don't really deal with it much.
Well, I mean,
I haven't dealt with it really yet.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people specialize in it.
I have a couple, and it's a very touchy subject. So you've got to balance and kind of tiptoe. You represent both of them, so you've got to be fair across the board, but sympathetic to each of them's feelings and just navigate it very, very carefully. So one thing, that you kind of want to know is like, how is real estate typically divided in a divorce? So it depends on your state. So in community property states, it's usually split 50-50. In equitable distribution states, it's divided fairly. So Tennessee, we are an equitable distribution state.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that it's divided fairly. And I guess how they come to that is, whatever the divorce papers, read who has custody, who wants to remain in the home. Or what the equity is. And
I mean, Tennessee, even though, and I think that's where I find some people that, when they're getting married, one person may not be on the mortgage
mm-hmm.
and one is, but both are on
the
deed. So it comes down to, that's where I think some people kind of get mixed up in Tennessee
mm-hmm.
because they don't know. Because I know, like my wife and I, we're both on the deed, but she's the only one on the mortgage.
Yeah.
And that was just a financial
made sense,
move.
More sense. Yeah.
That was because I had student loans that, whatever else,
mm-hmm.
she made enough that she was able to do the loan in herself.
Yeah.
Not having to have me on there. So,
whatever makes sense for the household. But
right.
You're on the deed.
But I'm on the deed. So I still have equitable share, share in the home. So, I mean, there's, and of course, I mean, we've been married July 1st to be 30 years. I mean, so, we've had to own that house together since, we bought it in 2019. So, I mean,
but then you've got people that buy it that aren't married. They might be dating. But as long as the name is on the deed,
they're still.
Yeah. Now, when they go to sell, they're going to be pretty much 50-50. Because
Yeah.
it's however, what is fair.
Yeah, and I think that's where the courts will take, and they'll look at everything. They'll look at the finances. They'll look and see who, sometimes it looks to who's really been making payments. Sometimes,
Yeah,
especially in some of those cases.
yeah. Like who put most
The money.
down.
Right, and they'll
Um,
take and try to, and that's why we are the way we are. To see, they're going to make it fair.
Yeah.
So, and then there's times. One of the other things that in this is, one side can buy the other out.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll touch on that. But it says based on factors like income, contribution, and custody. So all those, and if there's any alimony or whatever. So if one pays more toward this, they might get a little bit more of the equity. So that's something, that's going to be written up, in the.
It's in the attorney. Their attorneys get all that squared away, and as far as, hey Melissa,
Hi.
welcome aboard.
I went and seen one of their properties today.
Yeah.
Andrew, I told him, I said, I'm going to go out and look at this property. All right. So how does divorce impact real estate assets?
Well, it often involves the division of marital property, and it's including real estate. I mean, that's probably the biggest part of it. It's a complex process, and it involves valuation, equitable distribution, and legal considerations based on the state laws.
Which, once again, here we're equitable.
Yeah.
Let's see, what options do divorcing couples have with shared property? So couples typically have several options, such as selling the property, so you can always sell it, and dividing the proceeds, one spouse buying out the other's share, or retaining joint ownership for a period. Each option has a financial and emotional implications. So, I've had a good friend, and her husband divorced. She refinanced and took out how much ever equity it was that he was owed and paid him that. So then it was just, quick claimed over into her name.
Yeah.
And so.
And, I know that there's somebody that's, reached out to me the other day, and, the house is, after she didn't know it, but I mean, once I pulled stuff up, the mortgage is in his name, and yet they refinanced, or there was some refinancing and stuff like that. And it was actually, she was on the where it got refinanced, but originally it was under just his. When they refinanced, her name was on it,
Gotcha.
but it's just his name on the deed. So, she's going through that process right now. She's like, I don't want the house.
Yeah.
Because there's too much memories and stuff. And so it's like, for her and the kids, she wants to, whenever it gets to the point, and, he's not wanting to be kind and figure out the best way on it. He's fighting whatever else, because I think he really wants the house.
Yeah.
So I think, one of the things that a lot of people understand, and we get phone calls on it sometimes too, is people call and what's my home worth because I'm fixing to have a divorce or I'm going through a divorce. They want to have us do a CMA.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've had another client that had an appraiser come out.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. So.
And sometimes the judge will request that to be part of the deal.
Yeah, because the house is priced for a divorce. I think it's not what you paid for it; it's what the house is worth if you were to sell it today. Yeah. Because there's equity in that, so they calculate that in.
Yeah.
So that's the value of the home.
What are the challenges of selling a home during a divorce?
Well, that's a lot.
Emotionally. Selling a home can be emotionally challenging for divorcing couples. It requires cooperation, very important, agreement on pricing and terms, and navigating potential legal issues. Emotional attachment to the home can also impact decision making. So you kind of got to look at it as just a transaction. you can't look at it
Yeah.
as a home anymore because, now you've got to look at the end goal, your new beginning. So whatever's going to get you there, both of you have to work together, no matter what the situation is, why you're divorcing or whatever. You've got to stay involved enough to where you're communicating and it's a smoother process for everybody.
Right.
And if you can't communicate together, get an agent that will kind of be that mediator, kind of talk to the husband for the wife. And, it's not.
Some of these going to be a non-bias,
Yeah.
Individual during the process. I think that kind of gets hard sometimes, but sometimes it's, if it's not always best of, well, my friend's an agent,
Mm-hmm.
I want to use them.
Yeah.
Or their friend's an agent.
Get
You want
somebody,
to get somebody
neither
that
one
neither
of you
one
know.
of you have an
Yeah.
attachment to.
Yeah.
And I know that agents will probably fuss about that if they listen to this, whatever else, but I think that's probably really the best option.
Especially in that case.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them being one-sided.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think even if I had a friend call me and said, hey, look, I'm getting divorced, and I'd be like, look, let me find you somebody that will, because I do not want to take and, I wouldn't want to ruin friendship between two people.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm friends with both
Yeah.
sides.
Like and even if you're not, if you go to the other person, which you kind of have to because you represent them too,
Mm-hmm.
And they say that you said blah, 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 then, it's going to get sticky.
Yeah.
And now there's friction between the agent and the sellers.
Right. And I know that some of the stuff that I remember I've heard through, training and stuff that we go through, because we're always going through training,
Mm-hmm.
is I've heard people say that you have to take and create a group text, especially with both of them. And you communicate. That's the only way you communicate together. If both parties cannot physically be in the same room, you have to have a group, because that way you're not separate chats or telling one other than the other. So it can be, depending on how the divorcees are, it could go several different ways.
Yeah.
But overall, I think if everybody would just take a step back, take a breather, they can really just work it out, make it as simple as possible.
Yeah. In a not so simple situation.
Mm-hmm.
How can divorcing couples handle mortgage responsibilities?
Mortgage responsibilities are a critical consideration. Couples may need to decide who remains responsible for the mortgage payments, refinancing options, and the impact of credit scores post-divorce. So, that comes down to, I think that's where a lot of times, if they can get along and they can do it without having to get an attorneys involved, that's great. But sometimes I really think that ends up being part of their process with the attorneys.
Yeah, I think they have to include all the assets, but
right.
But like, who's going to pay the mortgage? Like you're separated. You just can't get along. The divorce doesn't happen immediately. There's a 3-month process, I think.
Well, I think I've heard some.
They can't go longer than that.
I think I've heard some. Well, we know of somebody that, they lived in the same house.
Yeah.
Until the divorce was finalized.
So that's an option.
That's an option.
You can live together.
And they still remain friends.
Yeah.
So, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to see that they were both responsible enough to take and, they kept their distance or whatever it was, and they treated each other with respect and still do.
Yeah.
They're almost probably better as friends now than they were.
And sometimes that's how it is.
Sometimes.
I know when I divorced, I kept the house, and I made the mortgage payments. And we ended up, so I was brand new into real estate, pretty much, maybe 6 months in, so I wasn't real educated on it. So, of course, I'm going and asking for advice. What do I do? How do I do this?
Right.
And so I was told to do a quit claim. just to get him off of the property. But I didn't realize that meant he was still responsible for the mortgage. So that's not a good idea, technically, because had I stopped paying, it's going to go against him too. So it's going to mess up his credit. So he put a lot of trust in me, which he probably didn't know it either,
Right.
Put a lot of trust that I was going to continue the mortgage payments and then it not affect him or whatever. So when I sold, the house was solely in my name, even though we bought it together. And technically, I guess he would have been owed half of whatever. But I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So, I mean, I did give him some money off of it. Didn't make tons off of it, but yeah, I mean, just ignorance, what trouble it can get you into.
Yeah, it's really a sticky situation. It
Yeah.
really is. It's really, and that's the sad part. And it really takes a lot of patience, a lot of skill, to navigate through those rough waters. So, I mean, everybody has to be in communication.
Yeah.
I really think. I think attorneys need to be able to communicate with the real estate agents and the clients as well, because everybody has to understand what's going on at every moment.
Yeah, and that's probably something that both sellers have to give the attorney permission to do, more than likely. But it is smart to kind of all be on the same page.
Yeah, and knock on wood, I haven't had to.
Very
30 years.
Very
So-
blessed.
I don't want to go through all this.
Or very determined.
Hey, look.
But you could also refinance, and then just buy one out, pretty much.
Mhm.
And then the impact on credit scores post-divorce. So, yeah, I mean, whoever decides to keep the house until everything is final, keep the payments up, because, both of y'all want to go out and have a future after this. You don't want to have to start all over again. You're already starting all over again as a single person, which is hard enough. Oh my God, that was the weirdest thing. After being married 13 years, it's like, you've got all of a sudden all these people hitting up on you on Facebook, sending you these weird message pictures that I don't even want to talk about. And then texting. Like, texting wasn't a thing, of course, when I had met my previous husband. So after we get divorced, it's like you start talking to people and then they're texting and trying to have a conversation. It's like, I don't know what that means. And it was weird. Communication just was totally different after the fact. Let's see. How does divorce impact real estate assets? Is that where you're at?
No, where are you at?
Oh, no, Adam.
We've already talked about that. We're on number 5. So we're at what are the tax implications of selling property during a divorce? That's going to be, as much as I hate to say it, that's going to be a CPA.
Yeah.
Or a tax accountant that you're going to want to talk to, especially if you both sell, depending on when you sell throughout the year. It's going to be one of those things that you're going to have to both figure out how to report that.
Yeah, because, as a married couple, your capital, you can make up to $500,000 without capital gains. But as you separate,
it's still, I think it's still
$250,000. But is it 250,000, 250,000?
Yeah,
so that's why it's important to contact CPA.
Yep, it's definitely important to keep that stuff, and they'll go through. Make sure if you do your taxes yourself, don't do it then.
No,
pay somebody to do your taxes.
Pay somebody to do your taxes at that point.
Because it's going to all depend on how long you had the house.
Yeah.
And that's if that capital gains is effective or not. And then, if you've had the house long enough, there is no capital gains, but then again, how much did you sell the house for?
Mm-hmm.
So, and what did you net off of it?
Yeah.
How does that break down? Who gets how much of whatever?
Mm-hmm. Or who's responsible for it?
Yeah.
And I guess it's equitable it might have to be,
Yeah,
a little bit
that's
more on
probably
this side
good
versus
to get
this
that.
side. Impact on real estate assets.
I-
For divorcing.
And so I think that's kind of similar to that. Those are kind of identical there. So, oh goodness, there's that. It's all pretty much, I guess, that one stuff there. Crystal printed a book here, so we're still.
I did print a book. There's a lot of information. Let's see, financial or legal considerations. How does divorce affect your credit when real estate is involved? Well, we kind of touched on that. If, one leaves thinking, well, I'll leave. I'm not responsible for the house, and they are not paying. And then the wife or the husband, whoever's left, or significant other, they can't afford to pay it on their own, so they get behind. So it's going to affect both of your credit. Who pays a mortgage and maintenance while the divorce is pending? So if one is paying the mortgage, I think it's only fair that, one helps out with maintenance or whatever if something comes up.
Yeah.
When you think?
Yeah. I mean, and of course, it's maintenance, you share, I think, until the divorce, you get it finalized and everything else. I mean, if you can split it, you can share it, then do so.
Mm-hmm.
But, because at the end of the day, it's going to also help improve how things are split. If you shared everything, it makes it easier for them to divide that stuff out.
Yeah.
Can you be held liable if your ex doesn't pay the mortgage?
Yes.
Yes. Definitely. I mean, even though it doesn't, if both people's names on it, they're both responsible for it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
What are common real estate mistakes divorcing couples make? Man, that's
Well,
Steve.
like I did, a quick claim. And just not knowing any better, and you could still be liable for the mortgage even though you think you're off of it, but you're not. What are common real estates? We just did that one. Why is it important to involve a real estate attorney or divorce-specific financial advisor?
That goes back to knowing how to divide finances. It goes back to knowing, because they specialize in that stuff. They're going to be able to know exactly what is going to be best because I don't think there's any like set guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
but I think in every situation, they know every situation. There's been all kinds of different situations because there's been some ugly divorces and there's been some simple divorces. There's, when you get kids involved and everything else, sometimes it's, how does that, who gets the house, when there's kids involved.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're going to touch on next, children in the home. How does custody influence who stays in the house? Well, you would think the custodial parent is more likely going to stay in the house, which was our case. We stayed in the home, and it worked out better because, it's already going to be hard on the kids, hard on the, whoever's left.
Yeah.
But it's going to be hard on the kids. So any kind of stability that you can give them, they're in school,
right.
You start pulling them out, then it doesn't just affect you, it affects everybody.
Yeah. So that's, to me, I think it's whoever's taking care of. So Andrew said, what happens if you don't get enough from the sale to pay off the mortgage?
That's the hard one. Then you're looking at probably like a short sale or something like that,
Right. And I don't think in our day and time, I mean, we know that things are settling.
Or you can rent it out. Rent it out and then pay the mortgage.
Well, it depends on the attorney, on the judge.
Yeah, but that's something kind of you're going to know up front. You're going to know if you can sell and make anything or not. So when you go before the judge, he'd make that ruling.
you know, and I had, who was it? I had somebody that was talking to me about, it wasn't a divorce though, but it was, I think it was, you know, a family property.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the judge, they had sometimes they have specific agents that they
Well, appoint or
appoint.
something? Yeah.
They'll appoint an attorney. Sometimes
Yeah,
in a
because
divorce, they'll appoint
sometimes
an attorney.
you have one not wanting to sell
Right.
at all. And then they can't get on the same page.
Yep.
So the judge has to bring somebody in to make those decisions for you.
Yeah, and then those aren't the fun ones. But I
Yeah.
think, you know, like where Andrew was saying, I think that what I was kind of going on to is homes are still selling. You know, we're still getting an increase in value in our area.
Mhm.
And I think what was it, an average about 3 or 4%
Yeah.
overall, even though things are settling,
Mhm.
kind of slowed down a little bit. You know, we're still, prices of homes are still going up. So I think
Here it is right here. What happens if one spouse refuses to sell the house? If the court orders the sale, refusal can lead to legal consequences. In continuous cases, the judge can appoint a third party to oversee the sale.
so.
The court can force the sale of a home. It's deemed the best way to divide assets to repay joint debts. The court can issue a sale order even if one spouse disagrees. There was one in here after paying off the mortgage, close costs. There was one that talked about if there wasn't enough equity in the home. What should you consider? Well,
No, what happens to the rest
Mhm.
it's underwater or has no equity.
there you go.
Options include short selling, renting out, or one source keeping it with an agreement on how future gains or losses are handled.
Yeah.
So it comes down, yet, you know, like you were kind of saying, one keeps it, and then they have to have, you know, it's in their divorce decree
Mhm.
that they have to at some point sell it by such and such time.
Yeah, and at
So-
that point, it'll be 50-50 or however. Or if one person who's left in the home is making the mortgage payments, you know, they might say, well, you would deduct those mortgage payments from the equity and then split what's
Yeah.
left.
But
'Cause that would
I
be
still
more
think,
equitable.
you know, I still think there's going to be plenty in it. I mean, unless you just bought the house, that's where it's going to be, I think, where they may not have enough.
Or when you bought it at the top of the market and
Mhm.
then now, you know, it's got to
And you're
play
basically
catch up.
breaking even.
Yeah.
So,
Let's see. How can parents prioritize their children's stability when dividing real estate? Well, it goes back to one person staying in the home. Or, you know, even when you do sell the home, maybe stay in the same school district. That might help them feel a little more stable. And then, you know, there's some where they kind of split it. So, like the husband will be there, or, you know, one spouse will be there for a week, and then the other spouse comes in the next week. And so they just split back and forth. I forget what they call that. But I've heard of that being done too.
that's something I learned.
Should you stay in the school district after divorce? Why or why not? Stability. Investment in vacation properties. How are rental and vacation homes handled in a divorce? I know I've seen that too.
Yep, investment in vacation properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are treated like any other marital assets, valued, divided, sold, and awarded to one party. They can also be used to offset equity in the primary home.
There you go. What happens to real estate held in an LLC or trust? It depends on ownership and structure. LLCs may protect property from division, but if both spouses have a stake, it's still on the table. Trusts require extra legal review. So, you know, you think you're being protected whenever you put these in trusts and stuff, but then
Yeah.
it's like, if something like this were to come up, then it just makes things difficult, more
Yeah, that makes me
difficult.
sit and think about, I had a client that I helped sell some of his land,
Mhm.
and then the other land that they had was in a trust. It was with his sister and his mom, and each had, certain percentage, and that they were going back and forth on all kinds of legal stuff as to who gets, after mom passed away, as to who gets what portion and how much, and based on the will, and one's contesting the will because they didn't agree.
Oh,
So,
wow.
God, man.
Death,
Maybe sit and think about that.
death brings greed out in people.
Well, divorce does too.
That's true.
They're kind of, they're both right there in that same, it's,
Yeah. You just read on the how do you handle property that's underwater and has no equity. Can investment property be used as a buyout strategy? Yes. So one spouse may keep the investment property in exchange for the other keeping the primary residence, or it can be sold to fund a buyout. That's smart.
yeah. What professionals should be part of the divorce real estate team? Well, a divorce attorney, a real estate agent experienced in divorce, a mortgage broker, a CDLP. What is a CDLP?
Hey Siri, what is a CDLP?
A consumer-directed health plan, CDHP, is a type of health plan that gives you more control of your health care.
Hey Siri, stop.
This is from BC.
Can't understand Southern. What can you do if divorce turns hostile over property? You looking it up?
Yep.
Let your attorney handle the conflict. Stay calm, document everything, and don't make emotional decisions under pressure. Yeah, because that's where you start making your mistakes and doing things that you normally wouldn't do, and then you regret it after the fact.
Certified learning, no. I think we'll have to come back on that one because there's all kinds of abbreviations for that.
Let's see what professionals should be part of your divorce real estate team. CDLP. Y'all got any ideas what that could be? I don't know.
Certified legal document preparers. Okay. So that might be more of like the title.
So an attorney that didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
Got it.
Possibly a financial planner or a tax expert. So yeah, I mean, it's going to take, it takes a party,
Yeah.
definitely taking,
A team.
a team to, for divorce stuff when you've got real estate property and stuff involved in it,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So how can someone emotionally be prepared to sell a home after divorce? Acknowledge the grief, make a clean break, and visualize your next chapter.
Yeah.
Saying that earlier.
Yeah. I mean, keep your eye on the ball, Granted, usually in a divorce, it's one person wanting the divorce, one person trying to hold it together, right? So.
Yeah, and then if, then it goes, what happens if the divorce turns into a hostile over property?
Yeah.
Which, that's the bad part, and that's some of the ugly of a divorce,
Mm-hmm.
especially when there's, real estate involved, when there's assets involved, because it's who gets what,
Yeah.
who paid, who bought what, who paid more, who did, who was, I think at the end of the day, I think everybody in a relationship, I know like with me and my wife, I mean, no matter what, it's all 50-50.
Yeah.
For years, I worked hours on hours and constantly was one, whatever. And she was at home with taking care of the kids and working a job, and I was working double,
Yeah.
which I sacrificed a lot of time with my kids.
Yeah.
but now she's working more in essence than what I am.
Mm-hmm. Because you're not doing the labor intense
Right.
stuff that you used to do,
Yeah, so
where you had to put so many hours
we
in.
both are able to have the time that we need at home because her job is flexible,
Yeah.
which is great. But it's just the amount of the income stuff too, and hers is more of a steady income than what mine is. But it's still those, we still balance that out, and I think that's, not all marriages are all that way either.
No.
I know you guys have, your dynamics.
Mm-hmm. We're 50-50 too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You got different people, you got, well, as we were talking today, with Kat being here, just independent women, it's like, I can do it, like to think that I'm one of those headstrong kind of, I don't want to ever feel like I can't support myself, like I've always been that way. And I don't know if it stems just from the way you grow up and, not having a whole lot, and seeing yourself in a different place than, you were as a child and watching your parents then, so.
Yeah, and I look back at a lot of things with my parents, and I've always made sure that even my kids, I've made sure that my daughter, I made sure she was independent, and she still is, even though she's married.
Yeah.
And everything else, she's
still very independent.
Still very independent on her finances and stuff like that. They both do stuff, and how they handle it, and we don't get involved in it. But I know that they're, they take care of that stuff. But I wanted to make sure she knew, and even my boys, that they take care of themselves, but also, in the relationships, they're sharing that.
Yeah.
Those
Responsibilities and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you still got people that prefer to stay at home, and that is a full-time job, because I did it for a little bit, while the kids were growing up. But you're always working. I mean, don't ever look at that
I know
as
that,
not
we've got
a job. I mean, that's kind of 50-50 too, because if your husband's out working, like Melissa, she was at home taking care of the kids, make sure you had dinner when you got home. So.
Yeah. Well, it's like like that said, the, one lady that contacted me and stuff, and, when she said, told me that she doesn't want the house.
Yeah.
But, she's having to go through this process of finding information out because he's not sharing the information.
Well, they've been in the same house for so long. I think they're both kind of out of experience on how to.
Now, and she wasn't working. She was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And, so she said that she's only been working for the past year, but she knows that she wants to buy something down the line.
Yeah.
But she needs to still build up. She's got good credit, but she needs the income.
Mm-hmm.
That's her issue right now. Steph and I talked to her about stuff, but she's got to get through the divorce.
Yeah.
Because she's in the house, she's taking care of that, and whatever, all the dynamics on that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I don't like having to, navigate those with somebody, but I mean, it's one of those that, that's what we learn.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it's an experience.
Yeah.
So you're always going to get different situations, and being able to navigate through those is what's important.
So all these are kind of almost redundant on some of these pages.
Yeah, they are. Do you guys have any questions out there? I mean, it's pretty well covered in all this, though,
Yeah. It seemed like it was a lot, but it was actually a lot of redundancy in some of the stuff that we which is not.
So we didn't read the tips and advice. So what's your number one piece of advice for someone divorcing with real estate involved? Separate your emotions from your asset. It's not just a home. It's a financial decision with long-term consequences. What professionals should be part of your divorce team? You read that.
Yep, I read that.
Okay. How can someone emotionally prepare to sell home after divorce? Acknowledge the grief. Make a clean break
Yep.
and visualize your next chapter. Focus on what you're gaining and not what you're losing. Did you read that last one?
Yeah, we were just talking. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, good gracious.
Well, all of that. And, well, what do we got? We still got 20 minutes left.
Still got 20 minutes.
Well, I guess divorce in real estate isn't that intense.
No, it's not that intense.
It's intense.
I was scared when she handed this packet to me because I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world are we
What
getting
are we
into?
going to talk about?
But it wasn't after going through it. I should have looked through it a little bit better, but it's been kind of a crazy day. And then, of course, we had a special visitor.
We did. We had a big whole family in here.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I get kicked off my desk.
yeah. So, Kat came to bring the baby. James and his mom came over.
Yep.
Visited with the baby. Lorela had a blowout.
Of course,
It
they
was
both,
like, what is that green stuff on
what
her
is that?
bed? Oh my gosh. So I'm here at the office scrubbing poop out of the onesie in the bathroom.
Right, would you? 'Cause it's not me.
I'm like, oh Lord help us. But yeah. So little Lorelai, did she lose weight or she just hadn't
She
gained?
lost some.
I
or
think
something
she
like
lost a little bit, but she's still
that.
a
She's not-
little over 5, so she's not back to what she was when she came home. But so yeah, she's got to go to feeding every 2 hours. Can you imagine? And it's not like every 2 hours, like when she gets done eating, she eats again in 2 hours. It's 2 hours from the time you start. So if it takes her 30 minutes to eat, then she's eating again in an hour and a half.
Yep.
Poor cat.
Did I hear her say she was tired?
She is
She's
tired
exhausted?
already.
Huh?
Yeah. I
You think,
remember.
you think she's regretting going home?
So
Too soon?
No. Cat loves her space. She does not like to be unorganized, and she was in this little bitty bedroom, the kids' bedroom, and she had her big old suitcase, had the little bassinet, and it's a lot. She was getting overwhelmed being there. So no, she needed to be home, so she'll be all right.
She'll figure it out.
She'll figure it out. We all did. Lord, I was 18, so much younger than her as a mom. And I was telling them, I was like, I remember when I had Catherine, 9-pound baby, and I had to go in for her first pediatrician appointment after having a C-section. I was taking at the time, how old was Austin? So Austin would have been like 4. Jacqueline, no, Austin might have been 5 or 6. Oh, I don't know. He wasn't in school yet. So 5, and then 3, and then newborn, or 2, and then newborn. Into a doctor's visit after having a C-section. I'm like, how did I do that? How do you do that? You just do it. You ain't got no choice. Anyways, that has nothing to do with divorce, but
No.
it's family dynamic. And yeah. So. Well, we have no questions out there.
No questions. Who's got questions? Mila, Melissa, Andrew, you got another
Mama's
question?
been married her whole life. She ain't got no questions.
She might.
She's like you. I'm kidding.
She might like, might need to rethink some of these things.
No. She got her a great man.
No.
I got me a great man. Ain't gonna worry about it no more.
You gotta worry about it no more.
I had a great man before too. Just things didn't work out. God puts people in your life for their time. And when that time is up and their purpose is over,
Mila's laughing.
move on. I love you. I look up to Mila and Donnie. She told me something last time we were together there at the house. And she was like, I'm sorry that was TMI. But I was like, it really makes sense what she said. I'm not going to share it, Mila. But it was, it hit me hard. And I have tried to start implementing it more into my marriage. Because, hey, if they can be married as long as they've been married and it still works, so she's doing something right. or he's doing something right. He don't
How long
know
have
you
they
got.
been married?
How long, Mala? I can't ever remember. It's 30 something years, isn't it?
30-something years.
Hold on. We fix find out. How long, Mala?
Drum roll.
A long time.
35.
Yes.
So she's got 5 years on me.
Isn't that crazy? Why? That's crazy. But if you can be content with one person your whole life, that's nice. I can be content with one person my whole life.
Sometimes we have days where we don't know if we like each other, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we still like each other.
Oh, yeah. You ain't got to like each other. Just make sure you love each other.
No,
So-
we sit there and we joke about things and everything else. There's things that we probably joke a little bit too much on some things, but I mean, it's just it's
Yeah.
how it keeps us, humble and keep moving
You
forward.
know each other. Like,
We
like even me and Andrew, we've been married, not a real long time, but we finish each other's
How long?
sentence.
Not a real long time?
7 years, 6.5, 7 years, September,
Sure?
I think
6
will be
years, 7 years?
7, right, babe? Oh, he might not be on there anymore. But yeah, I mean, we'll say things. I'll start saying something, he'll finish it or say it at the same time. What'd she say, Donnie? Well,
Donnie still makes my heart flutter.
they flirt. Like, it's so darn cute. And, you got Mila, she can do anything. And she talks about Donnie working her like a mule. But he does it because he knows her, knows what she's capable of. And he just wants to keep you young and hot, Mila. Wants to keep them guns. She's got the prettiest arms you ever seen on a woman. But, so yeah, they're cute. He looks like the brawny man. So I picture him in flannels and just a cute couple. But
Well,
and in love, I think, yeah, when people are in love, you can just tell.
yeah,
I didn't
I
turn
guess.
my phone off. You heard it.
I know. And you just want to sit.
And I was
sit
just
me.
scolding you to make
Yep.
sure the phone was off.
So let us know what we should talk about next week.
Yep. Running out of ideas here, but
Yep.
we want
We're
to
running out
stay
of-
true and faithful to this show and dedicated. I mean, it's a good way to get information out that,
And sometimes we learn stuff that we didn't think that we think we know a lot, but I mean, we're still always learning
Yeah.
all the time.
Well, we'll always be learning.
So,
What time is it?
we have about 10, we're short, 10 minutes.
10 minutes. We just sit here and look cute.
Well,
Look cute.
I'm out. I
No,
ain't cute.
whatever. Melissa thinks you're cute.
Do some Reno talk,
Reno talk. Reno.
some renovation.
Ah, no, Donnie and Mullet can talk about the renovation. Hey, will y'all be guests on our show? We could seriously have them on our show. They could talk about climbing cell phone towers. They could talk about living in Australia. They could talk about building homes. Yeah, they do everything.
Yes, that's what she's talking about, some renovation.
Hey, maybe we do a more positive instead of divorce in real estate, marriage in real estate.
Well, we started talking about this when we started talking about it last week as to what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was, we came up with like first the 3Ds. And then, then it was actually, there's 5Ds in real estate, which is the death, divorce, what was it?
Depression.
I know had to do with babies. Downsizing is
Oh,
the other D.
yeah.
Death, divorce, downsizing. Oh, goodness gracious. It's all up there. What did we do with it? I'd have to look and
I
see.
don't know.
But it was crazy to think that all that stuff there is what, there's a lot of reasons why, real estate evolves the way it does.
Yeah.
Because there's always, diapers was the last thing,
Babies.
which is what we had in here, blowing out diapers.
Yes, we do.
So, family dynamics always change what you need in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also depends on how it gets divided up and changed. And,
It's like a revolving thing.
it is. I think one of the biggest things that right now, from what we've been talking about here recently, is everybody needs to realize that it's kind of scary right now, but it's still moving. Things are still on a positive note in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Interest rates are still lower than nationwide than what they have been statistically. We're still in the low,
Yeah.
below the average. Who was I talking to? Somebody I was talking to. We were talking about something earlier, and when they bought, a lady I was talking to earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
When she bought their house back in years ago,
It was 90,
they were paying
94, right?
89.
Oh, 89.
Back in 89 and stuff. And she's like, we were paying 10, 12%.
Yeah. But the prices were much lower.
Prices were much lower.
But people were making a lot less money too.
Yeah.
So there's all these factors that play into it.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
things will catch up.
And it's still right now is no matter what. And I know buyers, and there, consumers out there hate hearing it all the time. And, television, the media tells it all the time, makes it sound scary, but it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a really good time for people to buy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got buyers right now that are looking at, I sent them over 70 homes
Mm-hmm.
in their price range just in our area.
Yeah. And a couple years ago, we couldn't do that.
Yeah,
With no
right.
70 homes.
So there's all kinds of
Yeah.
benefits in buying right now because you can refinance later when it comes down
Mm-hmm.
and end up getting a good deal on both ends.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. This is more of a buyer's market than I've ever seen since I've been in real estate.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten into, it's really on that buyers.
Mhm.
Your sellers still come out good.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of there's a lot more negotiating going on, a lot of different kind of negotiating going on.
What's funny is, I just got Highway 64 under for the 4th time. So
The final.
4th
This is the
and
final.
the final time we are gonna sell this house. But anyway, so the agent, told us, when, oh my God, my people love it. They pass this house all the time. They were going to come look at it. Then it went under contract. And so it just popped back up and they want to go see it. They go out and see it. They're in love. They want to put an offer in. There's not going to be any contingency. That's going to be a clean contract. And then I get it. And it's contingent upon a $1.2 million tear down in Nashville. And
Yeah,
I'm
I still
like,
can't understand
oh
that
my
one.
God. Oh my
Did they
God.
get that under contract?
In 2 days.
Wow.
Cash offer. Only contingency is appraisal. Right? So anyways,
Mm.
contingent upon what it could sell for renovated.
Contingent upon what it could sell renovated.
Yes. Appraised value. So
When you sent that and asked me to take a look at it and everything else, I was like, what in the world?
yeah, are they crazy? Are they
Like,
crazy?
am I really looking at
So
this?
anyways, if that don't tell you that the market is moving.
Right. There's things that we have seen that are
Yeah.
just like,
And it wasn't even an acre. It's not even an acre
it's
lot.
just the location.
It's the location. Yeah.
Where
But
it's
I mean,
at.
a tear down, 1.2 million.
Is it really a tear down though? I mean,
It's
based on what I looked at, it might be a
look-
partial tear down.
You're gonna have to put about 500 minimum.
Well, if that
But it's
house
not.
gets fixed right, and it
Oh, it could be gorgeous.
could be a
Oh my
beautiful
God.
home.
It reminded me of
It's an
that
old
house
cottage looking
on
home.
beaches. Little English Tudor cottage.
That's what I'm saying. It's like
Yeah.
some kind of cottage
So
looking
pretty.
home, and it could it's definitely got some unique features in it.
Yeah.
And if they could really bring those out
Mm-hmm.
and make it modernized.
Yeah. And there were things over there, that sold
Yeah.
for $3 million. However, there were things that were move-in ready, you see, that weren't even listed at 1.2.
Yeah. Then, you get some that don't want to buy a $800,000 home because they may have to put, they think they have to put $100,000.
Yeah. Well, preference and, like wanting to remodel is one thing versus
I
what
actually had,
repairs.
Connie, I'll throw her name out there. She won't care, but she reached out to me and was asking me some questions yesterday on a deal she's got, and I asked her. I said, she said no, her clients are dead set in it, but they wanted to try to get a certain amount off and everything else. So I was like, is those repairs really worth that much?
Money.
And she's like, no, she's not really. I said, well, then that's a conversation you have to have. And is that going to be a deal breaker if the seller doesn't agree
Mm-hmm.
to doing that much?
Yeah.
And if they come back and negotiate less or so forth,
Mm-hmm.
or just kick back on it, period. Or if
Yeah.
they say, no, we'd rather fix whatever it is because that's going to cost less.
Yeah.
Will that change anything? And she was like, one of the things was, dirt was eroded away from where water ran off the gutters and stuff.
And that's
it
on a
eroded the dirt
lot
and
of
stuff.
reports.
Yeah, and it is. And I told her, I said, well, but her client was wanting to have concrete poured in there in the space or in whatever else and
Oh,
then backfill it. And I'm like, really and truly, that's his preference.
Yeah.
And yes, that's going to cost more money to do that. And I can understand his value of that,
mhm.
but yet that's really not repairing it back to the way it should be.
Yeah.
That's repairing it back the way it should be with over an abundance.
Yeah.
So I said, it all comes back. It does come back to preference.
Yeah.
So,
And you can't tell them how to do it.
no, and you can't tell the seller how to fix it.
Yeah.
You
You
can
just-
ask for things to get fixed, or you can say, hey, look, I want this stuff fixed, but
Sometimes
there's-
it's better just to ask for money in lieu of repairs so you can
but
fix
you
it
have to
your
make
way.
it. You have to make
You
it.
have to make
reasonable.
it reasonable, yeah, because they're not
Because
going to
there's-
pay to pour concrete along there when it's not required
Right.
by codes or that's just your
Exactly.
preference. So
So right now I really think that, even though we were talking about divorce and then we got on to, this stuff here, I think everybody,
Yeah.
if everybody will just have a little bit more open mind
mhm.
and be calm about things, be patient,
Yeah, be
everything
patient,
good.
communicate, and
Right.
Divorce is ugly enough, and especially when you have kids involved. So just try to stay adults the best that you can, and vent in your own time with people that love you and that are on your side, and then regroup, come back, and just get
Right.
it done. Get it done.
All right. Well, until next week.
We appreciate you. We don't know what next week's topic is going to be about. We would love for your input, and one of these days we will get it. I promise.
Yep. And so if you have some thoughts and ideas, I know Mila said renovation, so we'll definitely look into that.
Okay. So she was. Okay, that's what she was talking about, renovation. I thought she was
Yeah, she
asking
was
a
suggesting
question.
talking about renovation.
All right, so you've committed yourself, Mila and
Yeah.
Donnie. We're gonna have to get you set up, and then we'll
Right.
have you guys on.
So we'll take and definitely look into
I
that.
can
So
tell you the proper way of the drainage.
yeah, probably. So, but if you have any other ideas and topics and stuff like that, email us at realestateafterdark.kw@gmail.com, or you can call me at 615-713-8600.
You can reach me at 615-956-5250. We would love to help you, whether it's divorce, death,
Diapers,
diapers, whatever
downsizing.
the other 2Ds are.
You're looking to
Downsizing.
just buy, sell, or invest in real estate, just give us a shout.
We can do all of it.
Right.
All of it. So give us a call.
Oh, she said, oh no, I did not agree to that. We'll have to discuss
Yes,
that later.
you did. Oh, by
So-
the way, Andrew will see you Thursday or Friday. Love
So-
you.
We'll see y'all next week.
Bye, y'all.